this to people who have not...
Would you identify yourself by name and building?
And building? Susan Marcus, Westview. I'm addressing this to the to the candidates who have not been on the board. All of you are aware of the debacle that happens this past summer with the appointment of Sal Ferreira as a non-voted board person to RIOC. And if only some of you get appointed, and there are some open slots, and Como decides to do another Ferrara, what would you do? How would you react?
Let's start with Lydia and work our way this way.
Well, I would express my dissatisfaction by contacting probably Como, emailing Como, and seeing how we can actually turn that around. Because what we want, essentially, is for our voice to be heard. And if someone else is placed in, I have nothing against Sal. I think he's a great guy. He is very, he's a creative guy, he's got a lot of wonderful ideas, wonderful men. But as we all agree, we want our opinions to matter on the board and to be taken into account on the board, and that's why we run. So what would I do individually? Make my voice heard?
Howard, the question was for,
No,
specifically for
I'm asking for the non, yeah, the non.
Right. So Jerry?
Yeah, you know, to express it better.
Okay.
From everything I heard about
Jerry,
the...
could you stand up so
Sure,
close to
sorry.
the back?
Sorry about that. Well, now I can see all of From everything I heard about the Sal Ferrara thing, it really was kind of a crass political payoff. And if Sal Ferrara were as smart as he thinks he is, he probably wouldn't have accepted it and figured out a much more interesting way to have his influence felt on the board without creating a lot of rancor on Harvard residents. But that's what I would have done if I were he. If something like that happens again, this raises an interesting question, which is what kind of leverage the Roosevelt Island resident members of the board have against, I see Aaron going, no, who knows? What kind of leverage we've got to actually take action when something that's directly contrary to our best interests occurs. Yelling, screaming, definitely. Let it be known that we think it's a terrible idea, yes. But what we can concretely do to reverse a decision like that, I don't know. And maybe later on some of the veteran members of the RIOC board can talk a little bit about the leverage that we do have. It would be really interesting to hear.
Dottie, you're up.
My first course of action
Jerry,
would,
will you stand?
my first course of action would be to seek counsel with my legislative representation first, and take any advice there. And if it were this to happen a second time, then perhaps I, as an individual, might turn to some legal organizations to just bring attention to this matter. I will say that I think we all know in this room that it's very rare. I believe there are only 2 public benefit corporations in New York State that are residential communities. And it's a very unusual form of governance for a residential community. And so it makes these aberrations. I think they're tempting for the governor, but yet, would he do the same to a municipality? And I think if it happens again, it really is a big issue, and I would decide then individually what I would do. I think it's really serious, and I think that it speaks to some of the inherent difficulties of running a residential community under the aegis of a public benefit corporation, because I think the political leader is a little more tempted to interfere. So, and that's a big issue that can't be solved, and it's a long-term issue in terms of whether or not the island can move out of being out of governance by a public benefit corporation, but I do think that's one of the issues right now.
Adrian?
Well, I read about that appointment in the paper, and I think I would definitely write a letter to voice my displeasure at in overriding what the community wants.
And Grace?
I think the last time we protested, when there was I remember protesting, I don't do it that often, so I do remember when I do. But I think what we really need to do is try to push for the legislation that says that we can vote directly for the people who represent us. And I think until that goes through, and that should be a focus of what we do. I know that there is legislation, I think part of it has been passed by one house, part of the house, I may not be 100% sure. But unless we really move forward with that, this is going to happen again. It's going to happen.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Aaron?
If you are appointed successfully to the RIOC board, and you were suddenly given absolute power, I mean absolute power, to do one thing, to make one change in Roosevelt Island to enhance the community, to improve our future, what would that action be? What would you change? Remember, you could do it just one thing. You have the absolute power to do it. What change would you make, or what action would you take?
This time around, let's start with Faye. We'll move from left to right, and then end with Grace.
Maybe because I have this in my hand. Well, that is a very difficult question because that is a very difficult question to answer because on the spot, to think of something quickly to answer, I would just have to tell you that I cannot give you just one thing. And mostly it's because, well, you did say one, but if I'm going to give you one, I want it to be something great. If I just come up with anything just to throw out, then it's not going to be such a great answer. But, I mean, the only thing basically that I could change is that basically what we've been talking and speaking on all evening is that we need the right to man our own island here. And as Grace said earlier, we need to, the first step is to really have that mandated in the Senate. If that is voted for, then we will have the right to elect our own officials for the island. And that's the one thing right now we must do because even after we have the election, we don't know who's going to really be well, we don't even know whether or not the governor will even look at us. But at least it's showing, and that's another thing, I was going to bring that up in my closing, but the main thing that we need to do here is to let the governor know that we want to have a right and a say in our own community, no matter what the results of this election. As long as it's one of us, many of us, that he chooses, that's basically what I would change. I would make sure that we were governing this island ourselves. When you ask me that, I think about all the other little things that I would like to change, but then there's so many of them. But that's the first thing I think we need to do. First thing in order is try to maintain governance here on the island.
Adrian?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that question?
I'm giving you absolute power, you're on the board, to make one positive change that will improve the future of Roosevelt Island. What change or what action would you take? You got one thing you can do. No one will oppose it if you're given the power to do it.
I'd wipe out the River Cross Bowl.
All right?
Dottie, you're up.
I would secure elected representation.
Okay.
So I think elected representation is very important. If I could do anything, I think my answer would change over the last couple of years. We're working towards, filling the stores and getting affordable housing. But I think the most important component, no matter what affordable housing plan that we do, we still have a serious energy problem on the island. We mostly use electric heat, and no matter what affordability plan we come up with, we still have the issue of people are not going to be able to afford their electric bill. So even if we have an affordable home, we're not going to have an affordable electric bill. So if I could do anything, I would do an island-wide green energy plan that would give people the ability to have a low energy bill to heat, cool, and power homes.
Jerry? Let's use both notes.
I'm with Faye and Dottie, actually. Because if the genie gives you one wish, the wish you ask for is 3 more wishes, right? And codifying our democratic representation in law permanently and forever is what would give us all the other wishes, so, yeah.
Aaron, it's a tough question. Do we have unlimited resources?
You have the absolute power. You can do it.
Okay, one concern many people mentioned, can we secure affordable housing? Can we secure transport so that people feel that they can't be stuck on the island in the event of emergencies? Can we? Okay.
You're limited to one.
People seem to worry most pressingly about the difficulties in emergencies. If we can solve that, that'll be very useful. I think a lot of other things will flow.
I'll go with unlimited resources. If we had unlimited resources, then we can address all of this kind of stuff. So I would go with, let's give us unlimited resources so we can fund the school, so we can fund the expansion of the library, so we can fund whatever we want to do for the buses, for getting us on and off the island in emergency situations, so we could fund affordable housing for us, so we can fund everything. Unlimited resources, that's what I would do. Take that one.
I have to go for affordable housing as my main interest. I remember, I have to just say this, I'll say it quickly. I lived in Eastwood, and we lived on this one floor in the back, and everybody, there were 13 families, and everybody knew everybody's business. And for at least part of the time I lived there, we had the perfect storm. 30%, 1/3 was below, one-third was paying the maximum rent, 1/3 was paying in between, and 1/3 was double subsidized. And it was, it was wonderful. It was wonderful for the kids that moved in between and the people who saw other things. And I want to see affordable housing. I want to see something where I'm concerned now, not for the seniors like me, because I think that if any plan comes out from it, of course, it will have to protect me to some degree. That's where I live. But I'm concerned with the people who are 50 now and will be senior citizens in 15 years, that there's no place now on this island that's really affordable. I mean, you had Eastwood, so that was affordable, but there's not any place now on the island that's really affordable for people who are moving in now. That's what I'm
Thank you. Thank you.
24 years, sir. Jonathan, this is for you. Some feel strange talking so much into that. Some of what you said earlier got me thinking. I know I asked our council member what she has done already to protect affordable housing, what the impact on affordable housing when we get the the Cornell Technion complex here. it's just assumed by so many people in the city that we're going to be pushed, by many of us will be pushed out. What has been her answer, and I also asked her what it was going to be done to ameliorate the harm that's going to be done to the residents of Goldwater. And she felt those were both good questions, that she hadn't looked into it already means that she's never going to have my vote. What have you done already on the board to protect the residents? And also, and what do you mean by affordable housing? Is it just, does that include people who aren't in the high five numbers and 6-number incomes? And if you just indulge me, you helped to bring about, related to control the stores. Their mission is to make money for Related. They're a corporation, not to meet our needs. And I was pretty upset when I heard them. I think that proved it. They've been treating the current tenant, the current store owners pretty shabbily, and who cannot invest anything because they don't know when they'll be kicked out. Do you think that who's the biggest booster, really think the fact that you seem to have any control of what they're going to do to make money for them, the best plan? So I give all three of those questions to you, John.
Yeah. A lot of good questions. I know people normally answer that and then don't answer the question, and I will. Part of the master lease is the purpose of it, and the original idea really came from the fact that when we were having a lot of these long-term affordable housing negotiations, we always came to the issue of, yes, we'd love to preserve affordable housing, but we don't have RIOC didn't have significant funds in order to do so. And RIOC was always trying to create ground leases that would be too high. So how do we get money for that? And then the other issue was, how do we liven and have a vibrant retail sector while at the same time making sure that RIOC keeps its revenue? And I think this island, its soul is affordability. It's most important to make sure that the people on the island right now have the opportunity to stay and to be able to purchase their own home if they have the means to do so, that purchase it at an affordable rate, and also for the people who don't have the opportunity to be able to do that, to be able to rent their home and have that control, to be able to, for future generations, to be able to buy it. And one of the things we had to do was find a funding source for that. And that's why when I structured the Main Street Master Lease, I made sure that RIOC was getting its revenue right now, and we would get any additional profits above that, and that there would be investment in the spaces as well. So what a vibrant retail does for this island is allows us to preserve affordability. It gives RIOC the revenue in order to operate, and not, because at the end of the day, you don't want RIOC working on a profit basis. You want them to be able to preserve affordable housing and keep these ground leases low. So I understand, I think that it's extremely important that we preserve the soul of this community, and we shouldn't do it on the backs of this community. So that was one of the main reasons that I did the Main Master Lease from the beginning. It was an affordable housing plan. So I agree with you completely, and I think it's extremely important.
I don't really think a lot of my question was answered. You didn't define affordable. You didn't.
We're not doing backup questions. You
But
had
it wasn't really
I want to
answered.
give the other contestants an opportunity to respond as well if anyone would like to. Grace.
You know, this island are the people in it. Bill Moyer said something recently, like democracy is not the government, it's the people, but this island is the people. And you are the ones who will determine the success of the stores that Hudson Related puts on here, puts in. But I will tell you something, nothing has upset me more than seeing empty stores here for the last 10 or 15 years. Nothing, because if you got $5 a month rent, I pay my taxes, at least RIOC would be getting $5 a month rent. If stores on this island aren't able to pay their rent now, which is not too high, it's because the people on the island aren't going to the stores. You're the ones who control it. The people here will control it. And when Hudson Relators put stores in, and you're not happy with those stores, if you don't go to them, then those stores will go out of business. And the only ones that will stay in business are the stores that you go to. But it's like easy. You're the one who has control. And of course Hudson United wants to make money, because that's what they do. But after I think they get their expenses back, I think half of it is going to come back to us. So I don't understand. You're the one who has control.
Would anyone else like to take a shot at Faye?
I'm so happy to hear Grace's opinion about the real estate, because a lot of people are very unhappy with it. And I understand that you are afraid that things are going to change, but I felt that most people were upset because they were worried about the merchants that we presently have. I mean, that's, to me, was the majority of the uproar. Now, as Ray said before, we control what merchants are going to be here. And every merchant here that has been here for years, we have, some of us, I have to say, lots of times I have not participated. I haven't gone to get my nails done, but then I don't do that. I wouldn't do that no matter where I was, because I'm not the nail person. But what I want you to know is that for 34 years, Roosevelt Island's Main Street has been the same way. Why? Because whatever vendors, whatever merchants who wanted to come here, they had to go through a tremendous process to get here. And by the time they look at all that they had to do, look at all the state had to do, they decided, let me go somewhere else. Why should I come here? And that has been going on for 35 years. That's how long I've been here. And I'm trying to think quickly, the new stores that we have gotten recently, of course, have been in Southtown. And I'm happy they're there. And I'm pretty sure that as time goes on, we're going to have some wonderful stores right here on Main Street. And I think as time goes on, you're going to decide that, this wasn't such a bad idea. I remember when the subway was coming, I didn't want the subway. And guess what? I love the subway now. So I think in time, things will get better. I think that it was a great idea. I granted that my main concern is the residents that are here. Merchants, I think will come. We will support them. But the residents, those of us, I don't want anyone else moved out of the island. I want all of us to be able to remain in our apartments, no matter whether or not we're buying or whether or not we're renting. And I think we on the real estate board did a great job, and we have been constantly trying to make sure that no more residents are going to be forced off of the island. Even though you're upset with, you might say, oh, you're getting rid of affordable housing. We're not trying to get rid of affordable housing. We're trying to maintain it. And I guess basically all I can say is that as time goes on, you'll find out more about what we're doing, but negotiations are going on and some things we just can't speak of. But we are. I just want you to know that it hasn't disappeared. We are. The affordable housing is very much on the top of our minds, and it's there. We're working towards it, and it's not going to disappear.
Anyone else?
Working? I took over as chair of the real estate advisory committee after Jonathan was dropped from the board, and we're continuing the work in the template that he started, where as the Mitchell-Lama building sunset from the program, which is built into the nature of the Mitchell-Lama development, that affordable housing is being preserved under the various buildings plan through a structure of ground lease extension that allows affordability to be maintained in terms of rents, in terms of maintenance, to the best of our ability. So I thank him for creating that template, and we'll be moving that forward.
Donnie, I see it in your eye.
I just wanted to add to Jonathan's remarks and also Grace's, that I think that one of the other, with Hudson related, the streetscape, the retail streetscape is really abysmal. I always find myself, as I come into the center of the island, just almost, getting a little bit depressed. And the streetscape's going to be improved, which I think will be really enrich the vitality of day-to-day life here. And it's a terrific walkable community. And who knows, maybe we'll get a restaurant that will be a destination restaurant where people will want to tram to Roosevelt Island for dinner, just as people go to the Waterside Club for dinner. So I think there's a tremendous amount. This is a great destination. I mean, it's a great way to travel, is to come by tram for dinner and evening out. And there's no reason why that can't become a reality.
Thank you. Anyone? Let's move on.
Steve Marcus, River Cross. Let me give you a couple of facts as I understand them. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. RIOC has been burning money at, I think they've been spending about $2 million more than they've been getting in for many years. I haven't seen the latest budget, but I think that those are roughly the numbers. It's been estimated that without some special additional sources of income, they're going to be bankrupt by 2019. These are the numbers that were bandied around in the newspaper. The Great Savior is Southtown 7, 8, and 9, which are enormous towers much larger than anything we have now. I think they go from 22 floors to 28 floors, the 28th floor being, the 28th floor tower being the one that's closest to the playground in the north. Just cast a shadow over everything. The question is, how much do you want to, the last fact that I understand is that Hudson and Related keeps asking for extensions, and you keep selling them extensions. And I think because they don't want to build yet, they're not ready to build yet, I think the extension runs out either this year or next year. So are you willing to give them another extension, or do you want to perhaps renegotiate for a little less money and maybe a more livable space?
Steve, is your question targeted to an...
Anybody wants to answer it.
Let's start with Howard and move our way.
Thank you. Actually, we've been running surplus the last number of years, and our budget projection does show a deficit starting in 2010, and it's operating deficit. It doesn't show bankruptcy because we have substantial reserves, and that's based on expenditures at the current level with about 10% surplus reserve for all expense lines. So we're not in bad shape, provided that we know if we need to tighten the belt, that we do so in a timely fashion. The extension for the Southtown development expires at the end of this year, and I suppose that if they do not commence under their grant of license, that there will be a renegotiation. So I don't have any doubt of that. As Jonathan pointed out...
But what do you want to see? That's really the core of my question. If you have to renegotiate, are you status quo, same plan, just give me more money?
Personally, I prefer something smaller. I don't know what they propose, so let's see what's proposed. We have a different environment now if it's renegotiated because we have Cornell Technion Center coming when it comes. Now, people should remember that before Cornell Technion comes in, Goldwater has to be demolished. Homes have to be found for long-term patients. some of whom will be in a very difficult situation. That needs to be resolved. All the technical difficulties of a major demolition project where we have a very fragile infrastructure have to be resolved. So that's that. It's a 30-year project that we're looking at, $30 million. So I would personally prefer something smaller. Let's see what's proposed. But without that, with monies coming through improvements in the master lease, with the possibilities of monies coming as Mitchell Island program sunset, and something does happen in each case, balance between the needs of the island, obviously we need money for our operations, versus needs of the tenants to have affordable housing in place where they live, not to be for sale. So
So you don't need 7, 8, and 9 to stay solid?
I don't believe we need 7, 8, 9 to stay solid.
Jerry, you want to take that?
Am I good? Yeah, since I don't sit on the board, I'm not privy to all the information that Howard and Jonathan and everyone else has, so I can't really make a comment about our potential budget shortfall. But as for 7, 8, and 9, I think it would be great if a way could be found to encourage them to build lower buildings than what's currently planned. Absolutely. And from hearing Howard talk about it, it seems like the money will be there from local sources to make it not necessary to just depend on 3 big skyscrapers to fund RIOC's potential shortfall.
Jonathan?
I think what you're addressing is one of the things that I noticed when I came to RIOC, being a business person. I was kind of surprised at how bad RIOC is as a negotiator. They seem to give away the store even before they walk into the room. And we're sort of in this situation that you've highlighted because of really bad negotiation techniques. And some of the things that I discovered with meeting with the city was that we don't even get our parking ticket revenue. We don't even know how much that is. And the city was very interested in working on that with us, and it didn't seem to really be a priority. So there's revenue there. Another thing is the RIOC Public Safety costs us $2 million a year. And we pay for it ourselves, although we pay city taxes. And one of the things that I said to some of the city representatives was, listen, right now, if you will agree that nobody on Roosevelt Island will pay New York City taxes, then we're fine with the status quo. But I think as the Cornell comes here, we become more involved with New York City, that we should be able to get a lot of these New York City services. So as far as Hudson related and the Southtown buildings are built, we're sort of in a tough situation because we don't have the funds, even though we have the funds to be solvent, probably, like Howard says, we don't really have the funds to preserve affordable housing in the long term. So there's going to have to be a balance in between the 7, 8, and 9 being built. And I think that you probably agree with me that if it was up to, if we needed the money to preserve affordable housing, that you would be in more agreement to make the buildings a little bit bigger.
Public safety will put a lot of people in affordable housing.
Right. So there's potential $1 millions of dollars there in revenue, and I would pursue that as I've been pursuing in the last couple of years.
Nadia, do you want to take the crack?
I would just add, I think Jonathan's example of the parking ticket revenue, the island as a public benefit corporation is not getting its share. I think all of these, I think there has to be a constant vigilance about, again, I'm going to go back to that RIOC being a public benefit corporation governing a residential community and constantly looking at what are we missing, particularly revenue-wise, and in context of our relationship with both the city and the state, and unearthing money there. And with the affordable housing, can we leverage, can we work more closely with, the housing department of the city of New York to just get what we want? I mean, what resources can we avail ourselves of, both as city and state, that will help us get what we want? And I think, again, part of this comes from being a residential community under
Adrian?
Well, I want to get a little personal. When you're speaking about public safety, and my experience with them, it's really bizarre. I call them at these 3
I'm not
o'clock.
talking about public safety.
Adrian, the question is about the finances of the island. Could you stick to the question?
Right.
If and when we renegotiate, you're right, the time is coming where we are going to have to renegotiate. What was foremost in my mind initially was that we could negotiate to make the buildings shorter, less. 29 stories is quite high. And when I learned the buildings were going to be 29 stories, I said, wait a minute, they don't even fit into the community's height. Octagon is the proper height. All of the new buildings are the proper height. River Road buildings are all the proper height. And this new last 3 buildings, 29 stories, at least that's what I heard. I was outraged at first, and I'm still outraged. However, it's one thing I've learned being on board. What I don't want personally is not what I have to always consider. I personally do not want these 29 flight buildings on the island, and I'm hoping that the board of directors will be able to renegotiate the height. However, I am concerned that we do need revenue, and this is what I mean, my own concerns. I have to kind of just fix them up, because there's so many other things that come into factor when you're making these decisions. And when I was just a resident, I had all kinds of things I wanted. But now, as a member of the board, I'm finding out, no, I just can't do it this way. I have to bring other things into consideration. But as a member of the board, I definitely would like to see the negotiations with Hudson-related change. I would like to see us taking back more. And because we don't know what's going to happen yet, but I can't wait until in fact, I was at a meeting once and that's what I brought up. And they said, well, we need revenue. I said, yes, we do, but maybe we can negotiate something. And I'm looking forward to that.
Grace?
I think everything is a balancing act, and that's what the job is, and that's what the board has to do. When they have to decide, is the amount of money that's coming in important? There's so many things that can be done on the island, and 29 stories does seem high to me. But if it isn't really something that would impact the island that badly, maybe you give it to them and you get the money and you do what you want to do with the money. You have to figure that out. And those are the hard decisions. That's the difficult decisions. Some things are very easy. They're automatic.
This is directed for the candidates running for re-election. Question is, do you see this as a political position? And do you think communications with the community needs to be improved? If not, why not? And if so, how would you improve it?
Let's start with Faye, then to Jonathan, and then to Hannah.
Goodness, that was several different things. My mind fell on the communication. And I feel that is basically what you're really asking, is the communication between the RIOC board and the community. It has not been the best, and yes, it should improve. That has been the most difficult. I have to admit that most of my communication has been in the street. It has been just talking to me as I'm walking down the street. I don't have the best solution how to improve it. That's something that I think the community, as well as the RIOC board, can come up with. Now what we have in place now hasn't worked out. As a candidate, my question to you would be, what do you suggest? And then if it's within a range of our ability to do it, we should do it. I don't have a direct answer to that. I'm on the board now, and we haven't solved that solution yet. So I don't know what we can do to make it better. And I'm looking to the community. The community is going to have to help us solve it.
Jonathan?
Well, there's two forms of communication. One of the things that I try to do is go to as many residents association meetings as possible and as many meetings on the island as I could. But secondly, one of the things I tried to do throughout the day was answer every single email that came to the RIOC site through the directors. Sometimes answering them in several paragraph forms that people were reacting. But one of the things that I noticed that we kept getting on the islands, we kept getting a lot of like the lights are out, or there's something wrong in the street, or there's been a storm and a tree is down. And I tried to answer those questions as best I could, but I started to realize that that wasn't really the most efficient way to deal with a lot of these quality of life issues, which is one of the major issues that come to the board. So I had RIOC install a 311 system, which you can go on the website, you can post an issue, other people can see that issue, there's a public record of that issue, and RIOC can respond to it, and the board members can see which issues are most important to the community. And I think that makes things a little bit more efficient, but I think overall, it's very important that the RIOC board members try to attend as many meetings as they possibly can do, and if possible, have some sort of, I know we've tried to do this before, but some kind of office hours or something like that, where people can come into the community. I think that would be extremely helpful. Thanks.
I personally attend virtually all the RIOC meetings, all the committee meetings. I attend the RIOR meetings, many community meetings. We switched the board meetings to be 5:30 in an attempt. Well, they used to jump back and forth mornings and afternoons. We made them 5:30 in an attempt to bring the community in. Our committee meetings are open to the public, generally, except special issues are closed, such as personnel and financial transactions. We are open to creating meetings in environments where we don't have regularly scheduled meetings so that there will be a public session. But this flows both ways. We've made ourselves available a lot of ways in these committee meetings that are open, published 3 days at least in advance, at board meetings, in various community forums, and it's also up to the public to show up and evidence their concern. We have contact, as Jonathan mentioned, directories at RIOC.com. I monitor that all the time, I know others do. There's See Quick Fix, which acts as a 311 for Roosevelt Island. So you go on seequickfix.com and report issues, lighting, environment, anything that occurs to you that requires some attention, especially by RIOC's maintenance staff. And lights out, motivate, that sort of thing. And also we monitor that. So we are trying, we will try better than we have. I'll propose that we are open up an earlier session, perhaps starting the meetings earlier, and that we have a public forum for whoever directors show up. But I have to remember that we had a night before the RIOC meeting session with RIOC, and only a handful of people in the community were showing up, us included. So this is a two-way street, and again, I call on people, if you have an active interest, come forward, your help is appreciated. Thank you.
Linda?
And those who are willing to serve now. It is a big obligation. Thank you. Marilyn pretty much asked my question, so I want to just give it a little differently, because the essence of democracy is accountability to the electorate, the people who voted for you. And I'd like to know, I heard what you said about meetings and, et cetera, but the give and take with the community really needs to have some answers as to why you voted a certain way, why you acted a certain way, why you, might in the future. So it's more than just, let's have a meeting, let's talk. I would like to see more interviews with board directors, giving answers to why they voted the way they did, why they are considering voting a certain way. All the things you you mentioned just now haven't worked enough. I mean, I agree with you, it's a difficult problem, but email alone doesn't work, and meetings alone, because people work, can't get to the meetings. There needs to be more. Full disclosure, I work on the wire, so of course I'm pushing that a little bit, but I would like to see some interviews with some of you board members in the wire, on the blog, wherever. Be accountable to the electorate for your decisions. I had suggested perhaps a RIOC column in the wire where you can say, we're about to vote on this, we're considering that, how do you feel? Where you don't even have to answer the people, but they can email you and you get a sense of what people are thinking. That
Excuse
kind
me,
of thing.
Elizabeth,
I know.
question.
Yeah, so, I'm glad some people agree. I guess because someone asked the question before, I pretty much heard your answers. Are you willing, though, to give a Q&A to someone, the wire, whatever, so that we know what you're doing and why? Are you willing to do that?
Is your question directed to anyone in
Whoever would like to answer.
or the group?
Yeah.
Let's start with Adrian and work our way to the right. Adrian?
Do you have a microphone for you?
If I were elected, I certainly would, be available.
I'd be happy to be available for interviews.
I'd be very happy for any kind of interview. It's pretty easy to reach me. In fact, when I don't respond to people within a minute, they usually say something wrong. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I've done stuff, written stuff for the blog, I've written stuff for the wire. As a person that lives with a journalist, I'm always willing to work with the press.
I like your idea about deepening the accountability to the point where you actually explain why you do the things you do rather than say, here's what we decided to do. Because a lot of decisions that get made, I'm hearing right now, are always suboptimal, right? It's not a perfect decision. And so sometimes from the outside it can look like a terrible decision. But if all the complexities of the negotiations can get sort of laid out and explained to people, then everybody might sort of change their mind and possibly at least have more sympathy for the board members' dilemmas and nothing else.
I'd be happy to explain decisions in public forum.
I think explaining decisions in public forum would actually draw the community in, and I fully in favor of that. I think that, so take the example of the negotiations of the new buildings that hopefully will be negotiated down. Hopefully, if the community knows what the financial implications are, and the community knows the balance, how each issue balance falls in the balance, then I think it'll be a community buy-in. Because I think everybody on the board, and every board that I've been on the island, we're all doing the best that we can, and with all the factors that play into all the decisions, I think when those factors are revealed, I think that everybody in the constituency will understand why this is important. So I'm absolutely in favor.
I agree that it has to be, or there should be communication between the board and the residents. And I thought about this for a while, and if I'm elected and appointed and all the other things, I would have maybe every other week, 2 hours in the evening, 2 hours during the day, where residents could come to me and talk to me about things. Because what I find is that residents will stop people on the street and they'll say, oh, I have this idea, but if it's an idea that's worth, that it should be communicated, the person needs time, and they need 10 minutes, 15 minutes of your time so they can discuss what they want to do or why they want to do it. And I always find that a back and forth talk is always, to me, better than just one question, one answer, because then there's no follow-up. but I don't have any objection to it, I'm just telling you what to do.
Linda, I think your idea is wonderful. For each of us to give you give you why we voted a certain way. And it's true, once we hear so many different aspects, and we can explain them, we're like, first I was going to do this, but then after I heard the true factor, and maybe I'm not such an expert in a certain area, after I did the research, and after I spoke to another colleague, then I came up with a different decision. And perhaps you're right, and that would be a better way for people to know how we're thinking, and they can also learn those tiny little factors that make that decision important, or why it should be have been voted a certain way. I was also thinking that it would probably be best, just like we have the RIOC Board of Directors meeting once a month, as far as a give and take situation where we would sit down, a plan meeting once a month where we would be there to answer questions, as long as it's not a screaming match. And I find that often when we meet, there's some yelling and screaming going on, and maybe we have to all become a little more flexible. And I think that's probably why I might be a little more fearful of meeting people. I would like to have a friendly confrontation and not a yelling and screaming. And you have to listen to each other. We really do. We all have different opinions. But my opinion, I am learning. I have to be flexible. I have to listen to all aspects. I can't always be personal. And it's kind of hard. It's a very difficult thing to do. But everyone on the board of directors have become that. We have all become more open to listening to all of the different ideas and trying not to be so personal. And we can't do what we want. As a resident, we have to also do what we want as a resident, but we have to do what's best for those of our island.
I want to thank all of you for having the energy to be on the board. We need to, but we also need to, America wasn't made just by, all I've been hearing tonight is how we're going to raise money to pay for this and how we're going to raise money for that. And we have some wonderful non-profit organizations on this island that have been here for years and years and have contributed to the community, to the culture of the community. And I wanted to know, when Hudson United came in, they were dealing with us, with the non-profit organizations, and thinking we could go anywhere. And I want to know how you people will support your cultural part of this island, the non-profits, the Boy Scouts, the theater, everything that's here. It's been, your thoughts given to them would be so appreciated, not only by the members of the nonprofit, but I think the community at large has always benefits from the things that are going on.
Okay, let's start with Jared and work our way back.
Well, once again, I feel like please stand. Okay. I feel like I'm starting with sort of 1 foot behind, or one hand tied behind my back, because I'm not really familiar with the funding mechanisms that enable those nonprofit groups to exist and what relationship they have to the RIOC board and how much funding they get from RIOC. So
money, if you get all involved with money with this, you're going to get into trouble with your thinking. You have to think how you can keep these non-profits here that are doing things and supporting them, okay? I'm sorry.
Have space for them.
Space.
Support them without finances, spiritually.
Spiritually?
Support them. They're a good thing for the community.
We got it.
Got it. And all I can do, I can't speak for the other 12,000 people who live on the island, or 14. All I can do is speak for myself and say, every day when I come home and walk past the Vivon Gallery, I'm glad it's there, and
and not on a second floor tucked away somewhere. And to the extent that the board has any leverage to help inspire Hudson related with the conviction that things like the Viva Gallery deserve special consideration in their retail plan, then those things should be pursued pretty vigorously.
Someone's worked for some of the, and volunteered for the Civic Association, the FDR Hope Memorial, and as the son of an artist, I can tell you that art and nonprofits are extremely important. One of the things that I was trying to do on the board at the end of my term that was cut off quickly, as you know, was trying to figure out a way to have some kind of nonprofit incubator space for the different people on the island and to have a grant writer that would be permanently in that space. Now it seems that, and working with the university and discussing with Cornell, this seems like a great opportunity now that the new campus is going to get built, to be able to have these nonprofits have a space, have some funding, so the community benefits from the university. So I think that at this point, I think that for the gallery and for all these different programs, wouldn't it be fantastic if they could, if Cornell and Technion could work with us to be able to fund these spaces? I mean, I think that a gallery would just go so well with a university space and the arts. So I'm excited to try to start working on that. I've been working with that with the university for a couple months now, trying to get them to do something on that.
Before diving into such a piece, I would just like to remind you that we have time for one more speaker and you just have to have one more question. So this is working out rather well.
I think the cultural aspect of the community is very important to its fabric, and it's proven over and over in cities and towns in the United States, and the arts can really be a revitalization of a community. I would, if I were on the RIOC board, I would encourage the board to look at collective funding sources, opportunities that might be out there with Main Street USA, organizations such as Main Street USA. The National Endowment for the Arts has a very vibrant funding program for arts in the urban landscape. The Cultural Office in the City of New York. I would first want to look at the history of RIOC's exploration of these opportunities and not reinvent the wheel for some of these avenues we've looked at before. But again, I would like to see Roosevelt Island look at itself as a very vibrant destination and residential community. And what makes the communities really vibrant are the cultural life.
As the ex-wife of one of the founders of the gallery in River Cross, his name is Ray Gris, I certainly would, if I were on the board, I'd certainly try to do everything I could to benefit the gallery.
I think we come here to talk about Viva, but thank you very much.
Okay.
But how did this come?
Let's move on. Let's hear from everybody.
Well, I have to tell you, I am a real admirer of Riva, and I have to admit, having it on the ground floor is really wonderful. I love walking past it every day. Whenever you have a non-profit organization, I think we as a community, it's just not just RIOC, but we as the community, we're going to have to come up with ways to keep it there. And I think that we can, as Dottie mentioned, with different organizations to help. And also we as residents, we should also get together and find out what we can do to bring it about, where we can maintain the home that it presently has. So it has a wonderful home. It's an ideal place. Hudson related, well, I think if they think about it more, it's really profitable for them to have it on the ground floor. It's just that, and I think they have many different ideas that's going around in their head, and anything that you hear is not set in stone right now.
and we do have some time to talk and negotiate. But I think that we, the island residents, we're all going to have to keep Riva in its place. And we're going to have to come up with ways to find the money.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, please. I think everything comes back to the fact that it's a balancing act. The more money that Hudson Related makes, the more money the community will have to give to nonprofits. I was looking at the last wire. I think they had 10 different nonprofit organizations, about 10, applying for $100,000 in public purpose funds.
11.
I counted them, but I say about 10 because 11. They're applying for $100,000. They're asking for roughly $300,000. So they're not going to get it because there's only $100,000. So everything is a balancing act, and there is a value in these nonprofits organizations. This is what this whole island is. This whole island, we used to say, it's all, the best things were started by the residents. The library, and I love the library story, the garden, Riva, I always pronounce it wrong. It started by the residents, and if the residents want this organization to stay, they will, because we're so smart and creative, figure out a way to do it. But we have to look at the broader picture, and it's basically, it's really a balancing act. If you want money from one thing, sometimes you have to compromise. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can actually get exactly what you want.
Well, it's also about capitalization.
My family takes full advantage of many of the nonprofit organizations on this island, and I think that the benefit of the nonprofits is priceless. It's really priceless. And so, as I think all of us would agree to that, and I think that all of us need to keep that in mind when we're making decisions on the airport. I don't know about everybody on the airport, but I'm sure that all of us will keep that in mind.
I think everyone on the board recognizes the importance of the nonprofits and the institutions that they represent. We're committed to developing resources to help them be in place. And where do these come from? They come from budgets, they come from memberships, and the memberships and the demographics change, but produce new resources. We're looking at the common space available throughout the island under RIOC's control in a way of making better utilization of it. And further in strategic planning we're developing, I'm sure the non-profits will have a very prominent place. As Jonathan talked about, the community benefit agreement is a way of bridging into a future where Cornell and Technion provide resources and space and probably the finances to help create a vibrant community well into the future.
Thank you. Last but certainly not least.
Transparency and resident input. Transparency was discussed to some extent by Marilyn and Linda, and I just want to add one suggestion. In Rivercross, we have a conversations with one member of the board every month, and that's something you might think about.
Three members.
Three members?
No, there aren't always three, but that's okay.
And the second thing is resident input, and I'm very concerned particularly about the streetscape and protecting some of our present store owners. And I certainly would like to know whether or not you're going to accept and guarantee some kind of resident input to these decisions.
Okay, let's start with Grace. Right?
I'm concerned, I think maybe I would like to know which stores you consider, which stores you're concerned about. Are you right?
Well, Trellis and Riva, and maybe the nails.
The nail store, I think they have a lease for the store. So.
And Trellis?
Now, the trellis has, I think, what he tells me, 5 years. We can negotiate and get a lease for 5 more years if he's done what he was supposed to do. So anyway. But he wants more. But I don't know, they have to work it out. That's something they have to work it out. But, and the other one was a nonprofit thing. I don't know, to me, it just seems that the stores on the island wouldn't have any trouble paying their rent, which is the only stores I think that are going to have problems, if people went to them. And if people go to the trellis and that's what they want, then maybe they'll negotiate it. I don't know. That's up to the trellis and the what do you call it? I don't
Trellis seems to be very much a part of the community.
Yeah, I spend my life there, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, some people are happy with it, some people are very unhappy with it. But whether trellis gets a lease or not, then they're going to have to negotiate with Hudson Related. I don't know.
I'm asking for
What RIOC would do for that. What would you want us to, if I was on RIOC, what would you want me to do?
Let's not get into a dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, that's a negotiation between those two places. RIOC is
I think it's very easy for any of us, all of us. Yes, resident input is desirable. Now, once we have brought in a landlord, as Ray said, it's between the store owner of the merchants and the landlords to come to an agreement. Unfortunately, Trellis does not have a lease because the church wanted to do all of the things that they were supposed to have done. Now, he could have had a lease, but that is not RIOC's. It's not that RIOC does not go out and say, we're not giving you one. And we have to remember the residents in Island House. The residents in Island House were complaining about certain fumes and smokes, and there were certain things you had to do. And if you lived in Island House, you might, and you lived above the restaurant, you might be one of the people who were, had some complaints about what was going on. And you would be very upset if those, I guess, those safety cautions, the air conditioning, not the air conditioning, but the ventilation wasn't corrected. So when you give someone just some tasks to do, that's all he had to do. And I love Mr. Carr. But you have to realize that he did not fulfill something that he was asked to do.
I'm just asking for resident input on that and the streets.
Yes, residential input is always desirable. And we are going to hear you. And then I guess with the column in the paper, you will find out or hear more about why certain decisions will be made. But you're right. If you're telling us what you want, then it's our duty to tell you, well, what you're saying is a good idea. However, we have this to think about. We have that to think about. We're told this and we're told that. Due to some of our governmental regulations, we have to do certain things a certain way. And so, you're right. Government input between the residents and the board, I would relish it. We just don't have to decide. And I think a monthly one, or maybe something monthly, because as you know, we have a lot of meetings to attend. And I've done my best to attend as many as possible. So maybe once a month, we can probably arrange a meeting where we can have some type of...
Before you make decisions, not after you make
Well,
decisions.
before...
Please, let's not have it, this is
Yeah,
Peter.
and that's the point. That's a very good point, Vicki. So maybe that's what we'll do before. But what I'm trying to really input to you is that it's an island thing. The whole point of having this election is so that we can govern ourselves. So if it's before, and before makes sense rather than afterwards, rather than while we make a decision. So I agree with you. It should be before rather than after. But it's the community. We have to make it better. And this is just circling back to that the original question that we need to have better communication.
Adrian?
I'm not sure what further I have to say, except that there was a survey of the residents. There was an opportunity for us to express the types of businesses we desired. and that should continue, but the operation of a private business is, you know, between...
Everybody's focusing on the business. I'm also talking about the seascape, streetscape.
Well, that's a different issue.
Because I was
and I think-
horrified at what the presentation was.
Oh, okay. Well, I would encourage you to make your voice heard in writing as well as vocally at meetings. So I would encourage you, you know, whether that's in the wire or emails, but I would encourage you to absolutely make your voice heard about the streetscape.
I think resident input is very important, and before, neither the board, I would say, or the people on the island had any input on what kind of stores come in. If a store even wasn't doing well and nobody liked it, they would still stay. And if the store was doing extremely well, it really didn't make any difference, which just lowers the quality of the stores in general. And I think that now, the way the process is, it's not a perfect process, but I certainly think it's better than it was before, because now, if you like a store, you can support it, and it can do well, and it won't be a political decision whether that store stays or not, and it won't be a decision whether that person is friends with someone on the board or something like that. It'll be just based on the performance of that business. I think having a business is a privilege, it's not a right. And that if you're supportive of the different businesses on the island, which I am, sometimes eating the same thing several times, even in the same day, I think that most of these businesses can do really well. And I think that one of the things that I've noticed, and I've tried to carry out to everybody, is just that the more businesses we have, the better that the stores look, the more vibrant it is, the better all the different businesses will do. And the more likely that they'll be able to pay their rent, they won't have to go. So overall, I think that now you have more choice than you had before. It's not perfect, but certainly you have more resident control than you've ever had with this new plan.
With resident input and the other has to do with the streetscape?
No, the one had to do with resident input to specifically
The streetscape? Okay. Wow.
and the business.
Got it, okay. I think whoever's sitting at this table now who happens to get appointed to the RIOC board would be absolutely delighted to listen to resident input before the decision gets made. Sure. To listen to the resident input on what the streetscape will look like. And from what I've heard about the Hudson-related plans for the streetscape, it's kind of boring and typical cookie-cutter set of ideas, but as everybody said who's participated in those meetings, it's not the end of the negotiation, it's sort of in the midstream. So there's still time for things to change if we continue to voice our opinions. But I think I heard you say something else too, and when you raised the question of the trellis, what you were saying was that there are certain sort of institutions which, even though they're businesses, also kind of hold a special place in the community for some reason, and that they deserve not to get special treatment, you know, when it comes time to sit there, you know, how many dollars they're paying per square foot, but that it needs to be thought about when the master leaseholder is thinking about the long-term viability of their relationship with Roosevelt Island. And that sort of thing, once again, since I haven't been privy to any of the meetings with Hudson related, I don't know if those issues have been raised, but I bet they have. And I would suspect that they could probably be raised more forcefully. But at the end of the day, Hudson-related decision is going to be based on their prospects of sort of maximizing their revenues. But I would be happy to help inspire them with a broader sense of what their responsibility is to the Roosevelt Island community.
I spoke with David Kramer, and we had a half-energetic conversation. I'm kind of under the weather. Things are happening. There should be announcements soon, both for some lease renewals and for some new retail. There will be a small sample area transformed into what they consider their vision of the streetscape before it's done generally with the purpose of eliciting responses from the community. They're sensitive to their role, as far as I can tell, in developing a long-term relationship. And as Jonathan said, this is a public-private partnership with RIOC, so we're very keen that residents have a retail choice that they can exercise, bringing dollars to all the merchants, creating a vibrancy that really hasn't existed here in my memory, and building something that will draw people to the center of the island for the purpose of creating and maintaining the vibrant community.
I remember when there was a bakery and a pizza place and the seafood store, fish market, and all those really great places that occupy all the storefronts on Main Street. And it was very sad to see them go. Wasn't really sure why they had to be padlocked out, other than that they couldn't pay their rent. And I didn't know whether or not it was because they didn't want to pay their rent or because they couldn't afford to pay their rent. So I think there are a lot of different factors in the streetscape. And I think that we need to understand those factors. And I also think that it's really important that those storefronts bring a benefit to the residents. And so if that benefit to the residents hopefully can override, and I don't know where the dollars are going to come from, and that's something we'll have to figure out, or has to get figured out by, I guess, Hudson Related is doing it now. Hopefully they'll understand that we as residents need services and a diverse spectrum of services. And I think it's absolutely very important. I don't think that we really need a guarantee because our voices as a community, we voice our voice to everybody, through the wire, through talks on the Main Street. I don't know that there's a guarantee necessary because we're just a local community. I'm going to say what I'm going to say, you're going to say what you're going to say, and I think that our community lends itself to that openness. And I don't think at this point there's a necessity of having that guarantee, maybe in the future, but right now I think that our voices are being heard. And I think David Kramer does listen. I don't know how much it's going to impact his decision-making process, but he's a pretty nice guy. I've met him, and we can also always keep on being that squeaky wheel.
Well, our question period is over. Thank you for your questions. I think we've covered an enormous range of issues really critical to everybody in the room. And thank you very much. What remains now is for our closing statements, which will start with Lydia and go